Dale, it's such a pleasure to have you on the Soul Rose Show. I've been fangirling you ever since Mayor connected us and ever since I watched your movie, your short film. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Cherie. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
thanks to Mayor, who you just noted, Mayor Cromwell, who brought us
yeah,
together. So
yeah.
thanking her
Thanks,
too.
Mayor Cromwell.
Yeah.
She's like, you guys got to meet. um, I want to start with your journey. I mean, I know that, you have a story, we all do. But the work that you're doing is so powerful and so niched, really. And so I'm sure you went through your own little initiations to get to the place where you're sharing from a powerful space. So anything that you feel to share with us about your journey is great.
Sure. So in my experience I'm essentially a spokesperson for the sacred feminine, which is a funny thing to say. The reason I say it is because I actually have a long career as a spokesperson for many corporations, many, even Fortune 100 brands who have put me in front in order to represent their brand. So being able to speak about whatever it is that a corporation is needing to promote, I've been out in front. So I speak, I promote, I
You
explain.
totally have that like journalist voice too, like the sultry, deep journalist voice.
Well, thank you, I guess, right? But that's what it is. It's a pleasure for me. It's something that I enjoy. I can take technical information and make it relatable, whether it has to do with proton therapy and cancer treatment, this sort of thing. So I teach, I explain, I share.
Mm.
My journey with the sacred feminine was so personally transformative for me when this sacred feminine energy and imagery started coming into my life. It was something I knew I in turn needed to share. And so I did, because I had found it so transformative personally. So my journey is I grew up in the Catholic faith. And I love all of the images. I love to see Mary with her little baby, all the statues and the saints and the incense and the flowers and the beauty.
Yeah.
And I have remained, it remains with me, a strong, strong, alive relationship with Christ consciousness, as in this beautiful consciousness that belongs to all of us, that understands that we are the image and likeness of the divine. And my favorite parts of that message are all that I do, you can do. It's living a life with such incredible compassion and the ability to know the highest frequencies that on our human level, it's not where we usually dwell. So, a very nice model in Christ consciousness. For me, this is a consciousness available to all people. So, I'm not a religious person. I'm grateful for my Catholic background and upbringing. It wasn't an issue, it was fine. And there was a lot of beauty in it. And my understanding was always somehow was able to see in between worlds in my earliest memories. So I understood that it was a religion. I understood that it was a human way to begin to grasp this thing that we call the divine, this transcendent thing of the creator, the energy behind all things, the life force. So my understanding of the divine was always beyond gender anyway. It's the energy behind all things. It's becoming incomplete at the same time. It's the supreme love and compassion. It's the highest frequencies available. It's everything beyond our limited human perception. And it's imbued in all things, and it's exquisitely, profoundly evident in nature and in all acts of love and kindness and empathy. It's all around us and in us. My understanding was so very spiritual anyway, that when the term goddess started crossing my path at a time when I was in a crossroads in my life, I did not like the term goddess. I didn't feel the need for it because, after all, it's all beyond gender anyway. So why do we need this term? I didn't like it. And
But can
then
I
it,
ask you really quick, was that something you internalized from church that God is gender isn't about gender? Or is that just
oh,
something that
no, no,
came
no.
to you personally that you just kind of knew and had a knowing of?
So yes, so while I grew up with all the language of, God the Father and He, and that laid some deep grooves in my, subconscious, of course, and it's the dominant thought form for all of the world's religions. Male monotheism is quite prevalent on the planet.
Mhm.
But I also grew up in a progressive family. So by high school, we stopped going to church. It was just kind of natural. We just sort of phased out. And my house was not a heavy household. My household was more of a spiritual household. And so there wasn't a heavy-handed kind of dogma or doctrine that was there. And it was really more the beauty of it all. It was really more the beauty of love and compassion, kindness, and caring. So for me, the sense that the spiritual perspective on things was innate, was natural, it was there, that it's the energy behind all things and shows up in different constructions of the world's religions. And I could also see that at the core of many of the world's religions, there are fundamental uh, values and truths that do have value, that are about love, that are about compassion, that are about care. So when this term goddess started crossing my path, I didn't like it because I didn't see the need for it. It because it's all beyond gender anyway. But then I thought, if I'm comfortable with the term God, I would say universe too, that sort of thing. But if I'm comfortable with the term God to sort of encompass everything and be genderless, why am I uncomfortable with the term goddess? And that's really what
Mm.
started my journey. It really is what made me go straight toward that term, that word, goddess, and begin to learn the history of the sacred feminine. And I studied all of the seminal scholars that we had at the time that I was taking on this path, to whom I owe a great deal of gratitude, and I'm indebted to them. Their names appear in the bibliography of my book and are often credited for what they gave me in terms of understanding the history of the goddess, which is our collective history as humans on the planet. When you look at Paleolithic history, Neolithic history, and you see that our foremothers and forefathers around the world perceived the energy behind all things to be female. And I also came to understand that in societies, even current societies, indigenous cultures that didn't lose the thread, when the creator or the energy behind all things is understood to be female, those cultures are different than cultures that have male monotheism or a male deity. And they are egalitarian. They
Mhm.
honor nature. They honor the eternal cycle of birth, growth, death, renewal. They honor birthing and nurturing. And again, there's not gender hierarchy. So there came to be so much to learn about the goddess and our lost history, that's where my journey began.
So fascinating. Yeah, the gender disparity. In my religion of origin, Mormonism, there was a heavenly, we were told there was a heavenly mother, but we weren't to pray to her. We were still, don't talk about her, don't pray about her. It's just like lump her into the heavenly parents piece of like there's a father God and a mother God, but we're not really talking about the mother God. And so it's a little different. Like at least in Catholicism, you have imagery of the Virgin Mary and, you know, no, we won't even go to what they did to Mary Magdalene, but that's a whole other story. She was really I don't want to say demonized, but to some extent was, and then redeemed in 1969, I think is when they redacted that she was a penitent prostitute. But anyway, I think that it's interesting, what how we react in our bodies as we're growing up. Like you said, there was already the neural patterning laid down, and it's already in the consciousness that we have a monotheistic father God. Um, and to insert a feminine presence there almost feels a bit heretical, even now. I would say even now, it's changing. What have you noticed even since when you started the path versus now, how that's shifting?
Well, I will say that since our world's dominant religions are around male monotheism with a dominant male gender creator, it is a very powerful thing. And I'm going to give you an example. Well, like there's a couple parts to your question, and then I'm going to do the first part first. As we begin to experiment with the images and the sense of this female presence. So, for example, so many years ago, and it was a part of my play, the first thing that I did in 1999 was a musical theater production with a cast of 7 women, different ages, shapes, sizes, and colors. And one of the parts of it was to say, Our Mother, who art within us, each breath brings us to you. Thy wisdom come, thy will be done as we honor your presence within us. Each day you give us all that we need. Your abundance calls us to give and receive all that is loving and pleasurable. You are the courage that moves us to be true to ourselves, and we act with grace and power. We relax into your cycles of birth, growth, death, renewal. Out of the womb, the darkness, the void comes new life. For you are the mother of all things. Your body is the sacred earth and our bodies. Your love nurtures and unites us all now and forevermore. Amen.
Amen.
Right?
Beautiful.
Taking, yeah, these deeply grooved, prayers and just giving them the sense of the feminine, it has a way of getting underneath the psychic tracks that have been laid there into even deeper psychic terrain. That's always been there. I love the archetype, Cherie, because we're all born with these archetypes, and the sacred feminine is one of them. The sacred feminine has several archetypes within the archetype as well. But these are part of our human heritage, part of our spiritual
Mhm.
heritage. And when we start to use terms of the sacred feminine, even doing something like having an Our Mother prayer, it allows us to get underneath what would otherwise block us from being able to access that deep and fertile psychic ground. You asked me about what differences. I found it a kind of a my heart welled up when you said, when I hear these words, they still feel heretical. And they still feel, it still feels
Like
kind of,
edgy or taboo or yeah.
right. To me, it doesn't. Not
Well,
at
it doesn't
all.
to me. No. I'm not saying it
Yeah.
does to me now.
Right.
Trust
Right.
me.
Good.
But
Good.
but
Good.
in some circles,
Yes.
not those listening to this podcast, but in some circles, absolutely, it's putting yourself out there as a heretic.
Oh, in some circles, yes. I mean, that's the status of the world. But coming from such a place of love, I can tell you, I've done this presentation in churches and in synagogues and at the Parliament of the World's Religions and the UN Commission on the Status of Women. And for me, it's not a religion for me. It's really the energy and the imagery of the sacred feminine as it flows through all human beings, men, women, all people. This is why I also come through the lens of the archetypes, because I do like to steer clear of religion. It's not about a religion for me. It's about something so vital. We are created on this planet, male, female. It's how life comes to
Mhm.
be, whether we're talking about, nature or ourselves. But whether we're male or female, even as women, it's the feminine side, the feminine energy, the feminine archetypes that have been pushed down for so long that even we as women have to lift up this feminine energy. Even I had to. That's why it was so transformative for me. And that's why I share these archetypes and I share her in all of her glory and beauty. I've got my wonderful statues
Yeah,
here.
those are beautiful.
Yes, just with all these different images from the Paleolithic, right on up through, today, and artists of today sharing the sacred feminine.
Yeah, those the archetype is I'm a huge Jungian nerd, and I love mythology and the archetypes as they access parts of our subconscious that are latent or dormant. And so these images of the sacred feminine are that's why they're so powerful. I have done a little bit of goddess history deep dive myself, and I was in New York with my oldest son, and we saw some of the earliest goddess figurines at the Met Museum, and just the full bodied, full breasted, these the creator is like, why has that? How have we come from that to this stiff? white bearded male, Oh, that one. That's exactly the one that I saw. Yes, those of you watching on YouTube, she's got a huge figurine. Yeah,
Yes.
wasn't that in Mesopotamia? Found in Mesopotamia?
Yeah, this is the goddess of Willendorf. So she's circa 35,000 years BCE. So she is Paleolithic. She's typical of the goddesses of that era. So she's
Mm-hmm.
round, she's grounded, and she's full. And she is the mother that has birthed all of creation. And of course, creation was birthed.
Yeah.
It was an understanding of birthing, and she gives birth to all of life. It wasn't until the advent of alphabetic literacy and the very first written creation myths and these new male sky gods that did things like create life. It was ejected out of their foreheads. Now this just turned word completely. What? What? But the goddess birds, and that's one of her sacred forms. But I also love, like, for example, this is our beautiful. She's one of the
Mm,
goddesses from Greece. The
mm,
goddess is in many, many beautiful shapes and colors and forms. Inanna, Cybele, so many of the goddesses
yeah.
are also depicted as black. So we understand this
Kali, the goddess
beautiful,
Kali.
yeah,
Yeah, the dark
yes, yes,
goddess. Yeah, Black
and
Madonna.
yes, yes, yes. Here's our Kali. Here's our
Mm. She's
Kali.
come through for me a couple times when it
Yeah,
called for it.
yeah. Well, Kali's wonderful because
Oh, you
Kali.
have the Black Madonna. Oh,
Yes, I love the Black Madonna. I talk about her extensively in my book and in my film. It's really
hmm
important to remember our heritage and also to remember, this beautiful sense of how it's not about polarity. It's not about light and dark and black and white. It's all integral to the whole. And it's out of the womb and the darkness, the void, that new life comes, which is what was in that Our Mother prayer. And it's so restorative in our cultures that have levels of prejudice and racial, issues and so many problems, to restore this beautiful sense of the creator as this incredible, beautiful Black mother of all things.
yeah,
Hooray.
yeah,
So it's a heritage that it's so important to look at this history and to know that this is what our foremothers and forefathers understood, as well as do current indigenous cultures. And the value of that, well, besides many values, is that there's egalitarianism. They don't have gender hierarchy. It's almost impossible for us to imagine living without gender hierarchy.
yeah,
It's almost impossible, but it's actually our natural state is to be egalitarian.
yeah.
There's
Is
no
that
culture.
work of Rianne Esler, who talks in the Chalice of the Blade about the egalitarian society being held up versus the dominator culture, right? Have you read her work at all?
Not so much, but there's no, for example, when you use the term matriarchy, some it's important to recognize that there are not cultures where there are women in power over men.
No.
Matriarchy is not a mirror image of patriarchy. In matriarchal cultures, there are no rulers because no one is ruled. It's egalitarian, and decisions are made uh,
Yeah.
with a cohesive sense of discussion.
Yeah.
There's
I
a
follow the
balance.
work of Amy Alabast, who has a wonderful podcast called Breaking Down Patriarchy. And she's getting her PhD. She had her master's in Stanford, and we share the same religion of origin, and we've met several times. Anyway, she's pointed out that there never was an actual matriarchy. There was never a matriarchal order, as you're describing, like how we see patriarchy. There never was a matriarchy like that.
Correct.
Anytime women were in power, like you said, it was egalitarian. That there's no evidence in archaeological finds or texts, sacred texts, or whatever, that there was a matriarchy. But they're matrilineal societies where women were, that lineage was named through the mothers rather than just the fathers, which I find fascinating.
There are different schools of thoughts about terms and words. So there's for example, um, there are whole schools of thought about it teaching about matriarchy and just understanding that matriarchy doesn't equal patriarchy. So
Yeah.
then there were other terms that came through, like focusing on matrilineal or other terms that came up, but it's acceptable to own the term matriarchal, understanding it doesn't mean women in power over men.
Over. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
matriarchy means in these cultures, the female line is where the land is understood to be, guarded through the female line, but there's no women in power over
Power
men, even
over.
if you use the term matriarchy. There are many matriarchies. There are matriarchal cultures around the world now that are indigenous cultures, but that doesn't mean women in power over men. It's just
Mm.
terms. It's terms and words.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's so fascinating. And I want to jump to your work on like the right brain
Yeah.
and how that found you with the sacred feminine and contextually what that means.
So going back to our natural state as human beings. So before the written word, the advent of alphabetic literacy at about 1750 BCE, and we look prior to that, and we look at our deeper history of our foremothers and forefathers. 90% of our human history is based out of the hunter-gatherer model. It's
Mm.
how our brains developed, our asymmetrical human brains, two hemispheres of the brain, much like our fellow creatures have asymmetrical two hemispheres to the brain, bilateral brains. Our blueprint, the way our brains are supposed to work, is to have them be in balance. So both hemispheres are at work for all tasks at all times. So both hemispheres are always engaged with what's going on, whatever it is that we're working on in our lives. But it's the way we attend to the world, where our consciousness is, the way we attend to the world, that will shape what it is that we see, and ultimately what it is that we create for ourselves, right? Because what it is that we see is the reality that we end up believing in, right?
Mm.
So the right hemisphere of the brain is the feminine gatherer nurturer hemisphere, and the left hemisphere is the masculine hunter killer hemisphere. Those were the terms that would be ascribed in the hunter gatherer model, which is 90% of our history.
Mhm.
The right hemisphere is always present and in the moment. The right hemisphere is available to what's happening right now all around us, and is very aware and is in deep relation to the other and to the world around us. It's about empathy, connection, presence. And it's also been described as the hemisphere that understands art, imagery, metaphor, poetry. This
Probably
is the
more nuance.
very nuanced, and it's the big picture.
Mhm.
The left hemisphere is brilliant in terms of the left hemisphere is about sequence, parts, pieces, what to grasp, what to manipulate. It's kind of a filing system, if you will. I'm going to first before I go into the filing system, I'm just going to give an example that Ian McGilchrist gives with regard to the left and right hemisphere. So a bird, which also has a brain like ours in terms of being asymmetrical bilateral hemispheres, when a bird swoops down to look for a worm to eat for its lunch, its left hemisphere and its right eye are focusing on getting that worm, right? The right hemisphere and the left eye is aware of everything that's going on around,
Mm.
because while the bird is looking for a worm, it needs to be aware that a red-tailed hawk might swoop down and eat it for lunch. So
Mhm.
these brains that we have are developed, of course, for survival. As humans, we are very sophisticated. So, depending on how you use that word, right? Everything is magically sophisticated too. But we have our left hemisphere and our right hemisphere, and babies, of course, are born with everything, in balance. And we start creating, the left hemisphere starts creating, it's almost like a filing system, if you will. So as experiences come in, it's like, oh, I've seen this before, that goes in this file. Oh, I've seen that before, that goes in this file. It's brilliant. It's how we operate. So there's a filing system in terms of understanding what goes where, what is it called, how is it related to the other. It's a brilliant, brilliant thing. but it's also in a self-referential world. So the left hemisphere has its filing system, but as you can see, it can kind of get stuck in a closed loop. And the way it's supposed to work is after we take in the all, check the filing system, essentially we're supposed to come back and once again see the big picture, which is in profound relation to the other and the world around us.
Mm,
When we are more left brain dominant, when we attend to the world more with our left hemisphere, or when our culture values the discourse of that society through the left brain, through the written word, through laws and segments and categories, and this is how we structure things. When that happens, we are not as in touch with our empathy. We are not as in touch with the present moment, with the world around us, and with each other.
and then
So,
enter hierarchy, right? Because you have that separateness power
well,
over.
the left hemisphere makes hierarchies out of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's
To keep us
categories.
safe, to keep
For
us, yeah,
filing. Sure, sure,
predictable and
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. And then, we have as cultures begin to value more attending to the world through the left hemisphere, as it begins to have written laws, that culture also then moves into gender hierarchy. And the gender hierarchy has been male hierarchy. And we've been in this for a long time. Now, I look at this as the human journey. I mean, listen, it's not about good guys and bad guys.
Right.
Are men dominant over women? Yes. And are women and girls suffering? Absolutely. That's the reality of the situation. That's the truth. That's a fact. At the same time, I look at the whole big picture of the human journey. This is what happened. This is our human journey. And it is up to us as women and men to come back into balance and certainly to lift up the feminine, not only within ourselves, but of course, as within, so without, lifting her up in the world around us. It is time for
Yeah,
us to
and
get
lifting
back.
the feminine up in men.
Yes, of course.
Normalizing their feminine so that they I have 3 sons and I can see it like it's just that masking of emotions. It's just the suppression really of authenticity, of humanness. And yeah, it's time. I mean, that is being restored. So I'm assuming then that you have seen a big shift. You've seen more openness and more receptivity with people being able to explore these concepts as opposed to just shutting it down. Like the consciousness is ready. It's ripe.
It's ripe, it's ready, it's necessary. It is in fact a clarion call, because I'm going to tell you something else too. In I started really teaching about all of this in 1999 with my musical theater production, and then it was a one-woman show. I toured universities, conferences, expos, UN, Parliament of the World's Religions. Then I made it a film, which has been awarded in 19 independent film festivals, and now it's also a book. So it has been a process. But here's the thing: when I first started teaching about all this, and as we were moving into through the 2000s, we were starting to see a shift to more right brain ways of attending to the world. We were starting to, through the iconographic revolution of the prior 100 years, with photography and film and images, newspapers were filled with far more images than they were words. The use of television
Hmm.
as opposed to a whole lot of reading. So images, film, the numbers of people that were, say, watching, the Academy Awards versus the numbers of people who had read the important books from beginning to end, the evidence was in. It was far more time with images. Well, that is more of a right brain experience. Images are immediate. The right brain is what really resonates to images. They're immediate. They're not uh analytical. It's present right there. It's an image. Boom, it goes right in. That's why I put up images in my book, lots of imagery in my film. That's a very right brain thing. So I was doing podcasts for Yale. We were talking about all of this. It was wonderful talking about how we were moving in more of a valuing of the right hemisphere of the brain in our education structures, government structures, all kinds of ways. Even architecture was becoming more of a right brain thing. Then came this, these.
Uh,
this technology, this
Okay,
technology.
everybody, she's if you're watching,
Oh,
if you're just
I'm
listening, she's
holding up a
holding up her
cell
cell
phone.
phone.
I'm holding up my cell phone
Oh man.
because our technologies now, because although they're images, it's systems, it's a swipe left or a swipe right, people have avatars, it's not actual relating. It's getting us and reinforcing us more in this left brain
Mm. Even though
representation.
there's a lot of images.
Yeah, even though there is, it's because it's systems. It's pulling us into categories, systems, apps. We're going to order our food through an app as opposed
And
to sitting
hierarchy, like followers and yeah. Yeah.
followers, and then
Influencers.
right, you're my friend because your avatar is here. And then people are looking at pictures of real people, but just swipe left, swipe right. There's no sense of
Mm,
connection or empathy there.
mm, yeah.
So am I saying that they're all bad? No, of course not. They give us information that's unprecedented in the palm of our hands. But what's happening is that we need to become aware. We all have to become aware of how our brains work. We have to become aware that the right hemisphere is this magnificent, already in there, ready to go ability to make us present, ability to have us in relation to other, to have us with a sense of empathy, wonder, the
Mm,
sense of the sacred, the spiritual, the present. It's all right there, but we are being reinforced with just the loop, that
yeah.
kind of left brain loop. People can hardly put them down. It's so compelling. That's a very left
Yeah.
brain. And we have to
Interesting.
like snap out of it. We have to learn how our brains work. We have to teach our children. It's almost like the language has to become so well known. Okay, enough time with the left hemisphere. I mean, listen, the yogis talked about it years ago, and the spiritual masters. It's time for prayer. It's time for meditation. It's time
Mhm.
for a walk in nature. If you have a small child in your life, please put the phone down.
Yeah.
Be with
Yeah.
that child. I mean,
Yeah.
there's just a real call right now because the evidence is also in now. We do know that social media has a direct impact on self-esteem, higher levels of anxiety, higher levels of depression. So we really have to be, on alert now to recognize that left to not making a choice to disengage, stop the noise, which gets reinforced by our phones and by technology and things moving so quickly. We have to scale it back. And listen, this is what even again, the yogis were talking about years ago, but it's more amplified now, trying to calm down that overthinking, over-engaged, overstimulated left hemisphere and go into the peace and the presence of the right hemisphere of the brain.
Do you
And that,
have
yeah,
a you can finish your thought, but I want to ask you if you have a go-to practice, moment by moment practice for staying in your right hemisphere.
it is a conscious thing to stop. It's so completely easy and compelling to be identified with the monologue that we have in our brains. Me too, right? It's the same. Generally, we repeat the same thoughts, most of them. Something like 90% of the thoughts we have today are the
It's just
same ones we had
programming. We're just
yesterday.
operating off programming, right?
Yes. So conscious things to do, sure. Meditation, meditative music, taking a walk in nature, candle gazing, yoga. Nature's a really big one for me.
Yeah.
But peace, quiet, meditation, nature, look into the eyes of a friend, sit silently with somebody for a while. Pet
Mhm.
your dog, pet your cat with presence, quiet your mind. It's a practice and it takes practice, but it is essential because it is
Mhm.
in the spaciousness and the quiet that the sacred drops in, that your own creativity drops in, that the answer to the question you've been, you know, mulling over repeatedly is allowed to drop in.
Mhm.
So
Yes, like the openness, the receptivity, so that when it does drop in, you can capture it. You're aware. Uh, I love that. So, anything that you want to share creatively? I know that you work with different mediums. And again, if you're only listening to this, you might want to pop over to the YouTube channel and have a look. But then while you're bringing that up, I also just want to speak to this, just that word harmony, balance, integration, because we're not talking about not operating in the left brain. We're just saying, would you say that we should be right brain dominant? Should is not a good word, but like, or is it just like a case, a moment by moment, case by case kind of thing where you may have to drop, you know, forward into your left brain to kind of lead out at some moments in time, but by and large, being in that present state of the right brain, the presence behind your thoughts, the presence behind what's going on.
So again, the way we're designed, both hemispheres are working, or they're both working at all times on all tasks. They're both working. It's the way we attend to the world. And again, Ian McGilchrist is a beautiful, beautiful resource here. Or the term might be, where is our consciousness? How
Mhm.
are we seeing the world? So while both sides are working and both sides are absolutely necessary, vital, and valuable, remember it this way: being open to the now, to the present moment, which the left hemisphere isn't. Left hemisphere doesn't want anything new. It wants to know where to put what category to put it in. So think about that.
How does it
Where
fit
the
into my
right
files?
hemisphere is open to the new, to the present
Yeah.
moment. Your life will go by you with nothing to hold on to. If you, I shouldn't even say that. Your life will go by without receiving the gift of the present moment if you allow that to happen. The present moment and all of the possibilities in it takes a moment to receive. Stop, breathe, and be. Quiet the left hemisphere. The way it's supposed to work, again, you're in the present moment. The present moment says, okay, well, what here is familiar? Left hemisphere categorizes, puts in, again, systems and processes. Very, very good. This is very helpful. In fact, it's critical for survival. Then, rather than just stay there, then all you're doing is seeing the same thing over and over again, aren't you?
Yeah, you're
You're
just
in a
reinforcing. Yeah.
self-reference loop. Yes. And think about a lot of the garbage we all carry around, right? And including wounding and things. Oh, no, this is not good. I don't like this. Isn't good. It keeps you from being present. So both sides are working, but just kind of think of it this way: present moment, check the filing systems. Good. Present moment, so that you live in the richness of life, so
Mm,
that you live in the peace of life, and so that you live in true, profound, deep relation to the other.
mhm.
I mean, what is the value in life, right? If not to be present and feel a sense of love and connection in life, rather than just the same old thoughts that we walk around with.
Yeah.
That's valuable, but you don't want to stay there.
It's interesting hearing you talk. I'm coming back to a place in my mind where I remember, well, as I've deconstructed some of my old paradigms, especially in the religious space, that it felt like we were always encouraged to pray to reinforce the existing belief structures, to pray to have them reinforced, to instead of instead of being open to something new that might come in. It's like these are the principles, these are the covenants, these are these things, these are the governing principles of God, if you will. And it was very hierarchical, by the way. Um, but but pray about this thing because you'll know it's true. And so my reference was, here's the capital T truth, and anything that I would get prayer wise or feeling wise outside of that has to be me not getting the right answer. Am I making sense? Like, it was always like to pray to reinforce the existing paradigms and belief structures rather than to open up to something else.
Yes, you can see the danger of dogma, right? You can see the danger of, it's this one thing, this one reality, and you've got to stay in this. I mean, that's what makes anything that is, open and fluid and feminine. This is why the feminine was also positioned as evil and dangerous and the downfall of the pious man. So, there's also another way to look at, yes, does it make sense to give the left brain certain things to repeat because you recognize that they have value and help the left hemisphere to perhaps have more positive repetitious thoughts than negative ones? Yeah, that's good.
Mhm.
That's okay. Replace some of the negative mantras that are in there. I'm not good. I'm this. I'm not worthy. Blah blah. And with the other ones, like I am worthy. I
Yeah.
am love.
Yeah.
That's good, but it's always going to come back to the present moment. It's always going to
Mhm.
come back to the feeling state. Also, you know, the right hemisphere is embodied. The left hemisphere is like, again, it's in its own kind of world.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
body is just kind of it's not really connected to the body. The right hemisphere is embodied. And what a beautiful thing that is.
Mhm.
So, allowing us to be present, allowing us to feel and to feel, emotion, and to feel the wonderful breezes on our skin, or the sun, or whatever, it's embodied.
Yeah.
And so are, when the creator is female, it's not abstract and disembodied.
Mm.
The creator is embodied. The
And it's
creator
not
is birth.
removed. It's immediate.
Right.
It's here.
It's
It's
immediate and
present.
here.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Which is why, again, images and imagery, because remember, idols are dangerous, idols are evil, idolatry. But the images and the idols and the images that are
So
immediate,
powerful
so
for you.
powerful.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So I'm
Okay.
going to go back just a
Mm.
moment here, because we were gonna kind of do that.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna bring us back there. We got on a little tangent,
Yeah.
but it was a good
Oh,
tangent.
it's so fun. It's just so fun. So when I did this play, I'm going to give you a little setup here. When I did the play, which was the first thing I put out with this cast of 7 women, different ages, shapes, sizes, and colors, it was in the theater went black. So everybody came in. The theater went totally black. So now you're sitting in darkness as the audience. And then I had Bobby McFerrin's 23rd Psalm play. And I recommend anybody listening to this, Google it, find it, Bobby McFerrin's 23rd Psalm.
Hmm.
It is exquisite. So now the audience is bathed in the 23rd Psalm while this cast of 7 women makes their way down through the aisles. The only light is the candle that each one is holding. And
Mhm.
each one is wearing a robe, some blue, some purple. So you just see these candles coming through, gently lighting these women. They go up onto the stage. They stand in a semicircle as the beautiful 23rd Psalm ends. At this point, your whole body is like this. Your whole spirit is open. Suddenly, the candles go out, a harsh spotlight comes down. A woman has
Mhm.
picked up this black book and she calls out, "The women of former days took 2 husbands, but the women of today, if they attempt to do this, must be stoned to death." Mesopotamian Law Code 2350 BCE. "The male is by nature superior and the female inferior. The one rules and the other is ruled. This principle of necessity extends to all mankind." Aristotle, 4th century BCE. "Blessed art thou, O Lord, our God and King of the universe, that thou didst not create me a woman." Orthodox Jewish prayer. "A woman, like the drinking of liquor, is only a minor offense." The Hindu Code of Manu, 100 CE. "If you care for a son, you don't go easy on his studies. If you care for a daughter, you don't go easy on her foot binding." Chinese saying. "Men have authority over women because God has made one superior to the other." The Quran, 650 CE. "I will greatly multiply thy sorrows and thy conceptions. In pain shalt thou bring forth children, and thy desire shall be for thy husband, and he shall have dominion over thee." Genesis. Now, I'm not going to continue, Cherie, but I'm going to tell you that the readings from this black book
Oh, so
continue,
cringy.
from this history book, from this prop that I made. And this is also, it's all in my film and it's all in my
Yeah.
book. The reason that I share those passages all the way up to the fathers of psychology, because, and all the way through the burning times, all the way through the burning of women as witches, because the people were trying to control everything that was fearful. So if something went wrong, it was the cause, it was a witch that was the cause, and many women were burned. That's a big part of our heritage. Witches are still being burned today in many parts of the world. So this
Mhm.
dangerous feminine, this wounding that we carry around. The reason I read those words is because in the context of the entire work that I do, they are read for one thing and one thing only: for healing. I say those words and they are powerful and they are not easy to hear. And the only reason I say them is because prior to saying them, there is a prayer of intent on my part. Those words come out, they go into our bodies where they find where that energy is locked and stuck. And it
Mm,
finds that same frequency in order to spiral it out of our bodies, to be
mm,
free of those old proscriptions against the feminine that imprison both women and men.
mhm.
The subjugation of women is just as detrimental to men as it is women, even though we live in a world where women are clearly far more physically and psychically in danger. Men are also wounded by the subjugation of the female. The
A
energy is in them as
100%.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Well, that was a great oration. And also now that you're saying that, you know where I felt it in my body the most was my throat. Yeah.
we have, as women, one of the biggest things, you hear my voice,
Mm.
it's loud. It's so important for women, maybe in your car, like that's usually a safe place. Nobody's going to hear you in your car. They might look at you, but who cares? Get your voice out. Get your voice as big as you can get it. Get your voice and say something profound like I am free. I am freedom.
Mm.
I I I will do as I desire. I am
Also
enough.
heresy in some circles.
Yes. Yes. So,
Just
let
that resonance and letting it out and letting it express and getting it out that frequency is going to heal. Just like you said, when you were hearing it, when you're saying it and we're hearing it, and that frequency meets and matches the unhealed parts in us, whether it's generational or in our immediate, life experience. Yeah, same thing. Like the frequency, it has to be a frequency shift to get these
Mhm.
things to shift out of us, right? Or to clear out.
Absolutely, absolutely, because they're energetics and they are embodied. So we have the conceptual things that we can do where we take words like the Our Mother prayer. We substitute the he's for the she's. This is very good because you start to dislodge the stuff that's in there. But then you also want to do what's visceral. You also want to do what your body can feel. Dance, move.
Mm,
When I'm telling and talking and storytelling, my whole body's telling the story because
mhm,
there's power in that. Your energy doesn't get stuck and pooled and hold you back. Let your voice out, let your body move. And if you need to just do this by yourself at first, do. But your circles will begin to change with people who accept you for a bigger presence and
mm,
accept your ability to move and feel and express. When
mm,
you change within, the world around you changes as well. Choose the people that are around you as best as you can.
mm,
Make sure that they are people who want to see you succeed, that they celebrate you. They want to hear you speak. They want to hear your thoughts. They celebrate your creations and your creativity. Be around that and give it to others as well. We
mhm.
women need each other.
Yeah,
We
we're so
absolutely.
tribal. We really are. We heal relationally too. We heal
Yes.
we heal through community. Whereas men, I mean, it's not the same. They're not wired quite like that. I mean, of course, they need their community as well. But in my experience and from the research I've done, women heal through community.
We have a wonderful natural biological reality that happens when we are in community with one another. And what's interesting too, because they've studied it as well, if you happen to have small children and it's that chapter in your life and the women are together and the children are happy, the hormone cascade in women in that scenario is just brilliantly healing. And then
Mhm,
beyond the chapters in our lives where there's small children around and it's just women, the hormone cascade is healing, beautiful. We need each other. Is it Nell Morton who said we hear each other into speech? Think about that. We
mm,
hear each other into speech. When you are in the presence of a woman who's really listening or a group of women, things come out of your mouth that will surprise you. And when they're really listening, it's not
mhm,
about, you follow circle principles. It's not about giving advice. It's not about people talking over one another. Really
mhm.
listening, understand, deep listening, and you will do
Yeah,
each other
I
a
run a
world.
women's wisdom circle, and it's that's exactly, you're literally articulating exactly sort of our templated. It's deep. It's about deep listening, It's about really seeing someone. It's about putting yourself behind their eyes and into their body. And yeah, I love everything you're saying.
And how right brain is that? You
That's so
see?
right brain. Yeah, that's so right brain. So I honor you as just literally a powerhouse voice for the sacred feminine. I mean, there's just a resonance and a timbre and a tonality to your voice that's very, very embodied and very powerful. So I honor that, and the fact that you were like, I want to say like primed or prepped, in your career path to be this voice now for the sacred feminine, like your preparatory work around like as the path was finding you and as you were initiated. Is there anything that you would like to share? Let's just say we have a listener or two or three or four or 100 that are on this precipice of really like, oh, I love everything they're saying. And, but maybe they don't feel safe yet. Maybe there's something in their environment or there's something going on where it just doesn't feel safe. Now, I'm not just talking about women who are in oppressive third world countries with heavy patriarchal structures. Um, Certainly there's that. But I'm talking about just the run of the mill lay woman who's now having her own maybe sacred feminine awakening, and her heart is yearning to have a voice and to do these things and to be truly embodied and be her authentic expression and her creativity and all those things. But it's not safe. It doesn't feel safe. What would you say to her?
I understand. I really, really get it. So, what we want to do is to recognize that inside of us, you know how I love the archetypes. One of the archetypes here, we have the maiden, the mother, and the crone or the wise woman. And modern, psychology tells us about our inner child. When you were born in your perfect, God made, if that's the term that feels right, female body, perfect, exquisite creature born, perfect, exquisite creature that comes into this world, that starts to learn by the world around her that she's less than and that she might even be bad. She could even be, and things female could even be evil or to be ignored.
Mhm.
Think for a moment and imagine this wonderful small girl that was you, and take her onto your lap and you tell her how exquisite she is. You tell her how much you love her. You tell her that you're going to grow up into a woman that's going to make room for her. That you're not going to worry so much about what the world says or what the world believes or what it's dictating to you, but that there is this child and she counts and she matters. Would you, in a heartbeat, tell her she's less than, she's not good? Would you tell her she's not enough? Would you tell her that she's evil and bad? No, don't do it now. Make some room for her. Give her some space. And these things, do them for yourself.
Mhm.
This is, and another thing too, I grew up Catholic. It was a-okay in terms of the beauty of it all. And for me, I have a deep and abiding relationship with what we call Christ consciousness, right?
Yeah.
And so this there's no conflict for me. I look back and I look at how she, this Black Madonna is threaded to, all the Madonnas, Mary and Jesus that we know, that also threads back to Isis and Horus.
Mm.
This was a big part. She was a
I
part of the
love that
picture until
statue.
400 to the year 400. This wasn't just in Egypt. This was all throughout Europe until the year 400. There's no conflict for me.
Yeah.
These are like characters.
Mhm.
These are transcendent. The feminine is beautiful. This morning I woke up and I said this, Hail Mary, full of grace.
Mm,
The Lord is with thee.
mm,
Blessed art thou and the heart of woman, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us now and at every transition. All ends are beginnings. Amen.
mm.
Think about, start small, and recognize that you've been told for a long time that things feminine are dangerous and the downfall of the pious, when indeed,
Including
I mean,
especially sexuality.
well, that's all in my book too. Oh
I
my
know.
gosh,
I saw it on
all
your
about
film.
sexuality, it's all there. It's
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
book,
yeah.
it's in the film. But remember, the mother of God, right? The female and the feminine is created by, if the term is God and that's the comfort, is created by God and is just as sacred and just as exquisite. And remember too, if your background is in this type of, if it's of a Christian background, everything you will ever read or learn or know about Jesus directly, maybe not your church dogma, but directly, is love, love of the feminine, no judgment, love,
Yeah.
love, love.
Only love, embodied
Oh,
love. Yeah.
only love. Yes.
Yeah. And so
Start
that's
small. I get it. I get the fear. I get it.
well,
You're
I
not.
love that you have those statues and you're bringing these visuals. So as you were talking about Mary, I just want to show this because this is a Mary card. I have my archetypes right here. Christ is here, Sophia, Isis, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary. Who's that? Jesus. Yeah,
Jesus.
yeah, yeah. So you and I, yeah, we're on the same. And I have over here, I've got lots of iconography that I've gathered on my pilgrimages from over the world that just speak to this. Again, when we're going back to the archetypes and the myths and how our subconscious needs this imagery, we've been shown too many male-centric deities. And so yeah, beautiful. I love putting things in your space that are reflective of an empowered feminine and deity that's feminine. And I love that you took that, I'm assuming a Catholic prayer, and really made it, you know,
That's a
palpably
big Catholic.
feminine. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, that's how the rosary is said. And one other thing I want to say too is, I was at the Parliament of the World's Religions. I set up an interview space. I interviewed 72 women from all the different religions around the world.
Mm,
Here's the beauty of it. Those women that came into this tented space, it was like a womb. It was really intimate in there. And I recorded these interviews. Not one woman, whether she was Hindu, Christian, any with Baptist, Catholic, whatever, Jewish, whether she was practiced the Islam faith, no matter where she came from, Baha'i, all of it, everybody. No one spoke on dogma. Every woman spoke from love,
yeah.
from love.
Mm,
Every woman cared about not only her children or her family's children or the children in her faith or country or town, all the world's children, from
mm,
all the world's faiths. Every woman spoke from love.
mm,
That is the sacred feminine. And yet they're practicing, Muslims practicing, Buddhists practicing, Catholics
yeah.
practicing, Jews. They are the sacred feminine. They are the voice getting louder in each religion that says, let us remember the beauty and the holiness of the feminine too.
Oh,
So that's another, piece of it.
well,
You can
there's yeah.
practice your faith
There's
as a
certainly a
woman.
revolution in Mormonism happening with this. And I've seen it in, some of the dogmatic Christians are getting louder and louder and louder. And so a lot of people think that, because they're more visible and they're more outspoken, that that's the norm, but it actually is not. One of the books that really woke me up was Dance of the Dissident Daughter by Sue Monk Kidd. And I don't know if you've heard of that book or not, but it's just this sacred feminine awakening around here was my here were my set of principles to live my life by. Here's the God of my understanding. Here's what shaped me. Here's how I was conditioned, programmed. Some of it, like you said, so beautiful, holy. Yet there's this lack of representation of the feminine. So how can it be complete? How can it be whole? And so therefore we don't feel whole. We don't feel complete. And like you were reading all those things, like it's it's because, like, being female means something sub or something secondary to the real thing. And, that was all my deconstruction later, and I felt the distance, but I didn't go there because I thought it'd be lack of faith, or I wouldn't be showing, my devotion to God by questioning or being more outspoken about it. But as I got older, I'm like, "Nope, this is affecting my health, and I would not be doing myself or anyone around me or humanity a service by denying what's actually happening in my body." And so, yeah, I think for every woman, it's such a personal journey. She may be called to stay as practicing in her religion so she can have an impact there, or so that she can have influence there. And like you said, bringing the love in there. My only thing with that, is I see a lot of women capitulating, or, to the patriarchy, even though they are spiritual leaders in their religions, that they're not, even though they're practicing, they're not given authority, full authority or egalitarian authority.
There's a long way to go. But I do love that as I spoke to all of these women at the Parliament of the World's Religions, no one spoke on dogma, step by step, breath by breath, moment by moment. And it begins within. It
Mhm,
begins within. How comfortable are we with knowing that we are the image and likeness of the divine? That's
mhm,
really what's most important. And our little girls are, and our baby girls are, and our boys need to see that as well. When you think about a little boy and he's born of his mother, and she is a kind of a, assuming that there's no issues, problems, and abuse or anything like that, none of
yeah,
that is happening. You have a human mother with her beautiful human foibles and her beautiful sense of love, and she's a mother and she loves her boy, right? It's normal, right? It's good. At some point, his beautiful mother, he starts to look around the world and he goes, oh, wait a minute. He starts to notice that the women are less than.
mm,
Ooh, they're secondary. Ooh, he starts to know that. It is a huge psychic wound.
mm,
You have taken this he loves so much, and you've just told him, she's secondary. She's less
mhm,
than. We like to idolize motherhood and apple pie, but we know that this gender hierarchy has psychic wounds for all of us, no
yeah,
matter how we identify. The female has been down. The feminine energy is down, and we have to lift it up. And it's
mhm,
many, many steps.
yeah.
And you're right, we're not there
It's
yet.
very
There's a
layered,
lot
and
of
it's
work.
gonna take a yeah. I'm here for it, though. I know you are too. So,
Yeah.
well,
Yes.
Dale, this has been really enlightening, really powerful, actually. I've been soaking a lot of this in. How can people find your book? Let's talk about your book and where people can find it, and then also your short film, which I found very, very powerful as well.
Well, thank you very much. My book is In Our Right Minds, which is In Our Right Minds on the Sacred Feminine, the Right Brain, and Restoring Humanity's Natural Balance. And my film, In Our Right Minds, is available at inourrightminds.net. It's a 45-minute film, and you can rent it directly from my website at inourrightminds.net. And I do invite you to get the book as well. I'm just going to grab it right over here.
Yeah, yeah. And I will put a plug in for that film because you gave me access to that and I just ate it up. So having something in print form to reference would be great. Oh, that's a beautiful cover.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And it's
Mm,
filled with incredible, incredible art as well. And I
mm,
also want you to know, too, like, for example, yesterday, there was a group of nuns who watched my film.
mm.
Yeah, yep. And they loved it.
Wow.
So, the world is
We're
changing.
getting there. We're getting there. Yeah.
And the book is also filled with art and imagery, as is, of course, the film.
Mm.
Mm,
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Dale. Thank you so
thank
much for
you.
your time.
I've loved every minute. Thank you
Me
so
too.
much.
Me too.